celebrating people's individuality and uniqueness, meeting them where they are, and valuing their opinion. If you ask Hilda Gan the secret to being a successful human resource or corporate executive, those would be her tidbits of knowledge she would impart upon you. She's an award-winning workplace culture and HR expert and the president of People Bright Consulting. The company provides HR consulting to businesses for every aspect of their HR management needs. Gan joined me this week to have a discussion about diversity, equity, and inclusion at work, and what it takes to build a workplace where everyone is excited to come to work. I'm Kevin McShann, led to this conversation. So Hilda, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm excited to talk to you all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Great to be with you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
As am I. So Hilda, I'm curious if you can give our viewers, before we dive into the nitty gritty of our conversation, sort of a 360-degree view of your professional career, your life, and how you got to where you are today.
Well, thanks for asking that. I started with really always being a giving person. Even as a child, I was always giving of life, and a very pivotal point for me came when my father passed away. I was only 10 years old, and that idyllic childhood where you go to dance lessons and you've got friends and stuff really did a quick U-turn at the age of 10, and I found myself becoming an adult. My mother really was a bit stressed by having 3 young children to care for, and the horror stories in those days, if you are an orphan, this is not a good life to have. So I really did my best to try to keep my mother as happy and stress-free as a young child could do. But I found myself being an adult, and having been a caregiver, so to speak, all my life, I decided that I wanted to become a nurse and a teacher. So I started my career in intensive care nursing, and then I started teaching, and I became a director. So I really enjoyed teaching, and I enjoyed the management side and helping people. My husband decided in the mid-90s to start an engineering business. And so the two of us actually started out, and we grew that business, and I'll share more later. But we grew that business, and we were very, very proud of what we did. It was a wonderful journey. We sold that business, and I decided that of all the things I love to do, it was really the human resources side. We built a place where people loved to come to work and loved being challenged and in doing the kinds of work that they really wanted to do. So I decided that when I wanted to start my own business next, I would do it in human resources. And that's my passion. I love helping people, and I love creating a place where people can come to work and enjoy work, because there's not enough hours in a day, and life is too short. So you need to also enjoy what you do at work, not just what you do in your pastimes. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, it makes a difference when people are passionate about what they do. It increases productivity organically, doesn't it?
Yes, personally and for other people, for sure. The day can go by so quickly when you're doing things that you love to do, and it can be a real drag when you're trying to slog through something, and it seems like every 15 minutes seems like an hour. And it's yeah, passion is definitely a key to enjoying work and
Yeah,
anything that you do.
absolutely. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on your journey through the HR field and why inclusion of individuals with disabilities is so important for you for giving them the opportunity to contribute to the workforce.
I think it's important that we recognize people's individuality and their uniqueness. And and to me that's people who have disabilities, but it's people with all of their uniqueness, their gender, their ethnicity, their age. All of these things make us who they are. And I find that it's really challenging for companies to really accept people who have particularly visible challenges. You know, some of us have problems even reading, and you don't see that as a disability, but it is a disability and people don't often recognize it. So it's really important. And I found throughout my career that we've been trying to help people understand diversity and understand people with disabilities and being equitable. When I was in my nursing career, we actually even had a multicultural project manager whose role was to help with diversity. This is back in the late 1900s. 1990s. God, it sounds so old. It sounds like I'm talking about 18th century stuff. But yeah, we're in a new decade, and then we're 20 years into it now. So, or no, not new decade, a new century. So that I think it's been a buzzword, but it's taken so long to make a difference in terms of inclusivity for people with disabilities. The AODA in Ontario has really tried to help establish accessibility and equity, and I think some of the larger organizations are very sensitive to that, and in some ways, you know, the forerunners of helping that happen.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to ask you about your work with People Broad Consulting, where you help provide businesses with HR consulting when it comes to all levels of their business and HR management. So I'm wondering if you could tell me all about that.
Sure. Like as I said, my husband and I, you know, we built our company, iTrans, and he's the engineer, and the other executives were engineers building the business, the marketing and growing and that aspect. And I was in charge of the operation side. So anything to do with the actual running of the company was more or less my responsibility to make sure things happened. And of all the things that I loved to do in our company was the human resources side. So it made a natural fit that when we sold the business, I wondered what I was going to do, that the people side was what I wanted to do. I'm a good operations manager. I can help strategically, but my passion, we talked about passion earlier, my passion is human resources. So what I did was I started People Bright Consulting to help small to medium-sized business owners understand how they can build their businesses, increase their productivity, increase their profit through the human resources side. And it starts with having a strong foundation. So I help guide business owners to make sure that they have a strong foundation, and from that strong foundation build their way of designing their operations, their people management, and their clients. So a good example is if you're in the hospitality industry, if you're Disney, you're going to hire people that are really customer focused. That's their love, that's their passion. Whereas if you're in the business of doing quality insurance, you're going to hire people who are very detailed, who are very driven to make sure what they do is perfect in every way. So based on those, you're going to hire different kinds of people. So you're going to create a stronger foundation of culture based on the type of company you want to do. And so what People Bright does is it really helps you identify what strategically your foundation is, helps ensure that you look at your risks and compliance for the world, for your company, and then look at your culture. And if I can add, based on the success my husband and I had of building a strong workplace, I created a way of explaining and a framework for what we do. We were actually when we were iTrans, we were one of the best workplaces in Canada, top 10 twice. So that dream of creating a place where people love what they do and love where they work was really realized by us. What a wonderful journey that was. And from that, then I wanted to explain, well, so how did you create that, and how could you help us create something for ourselves that is going to make people want to stay and enjoy what they do? So the concept is called REVUP, and REVUP is based on 5 values. Treat people with respect. Look at them as equals. Value who they are. That's the recognition piece, making people feel good about who they are. Then look at their uniqueness and tap into that potential. And that's a cornerstone of my company, helping people to really create a work culture where they rev up. They treat people with respect. And when you do a rev up approach, you actually create an inclusive culture.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were speaking on that, I kept thinking about meeting people where they are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I used to think respect was treat people the way you want to be, treated. But in actual fact, it's treating people the way they want to be treated. Because what is respectful for me may not be respectful for you. You may find that I'm actually, insulting you in some way. So there's a
Yeah,
lot to learn.
yeah, absolutely. And Hilda, I'm also curious to ask you about the efficiency and effectiveness in HR departments because, as you did your reading on me, I used to be the ambassador for something called the Discoverability Network here in Windsor, which is the province of Ontario's new online job matching portal for folks with disabilities and employers to get connected. So I'm wondering your thoughts on how we can help small and medium-sized businesses better streamline their HR departments because oftentimes they don't have the manpower to effectively run HR departments. So I'm wondering your thoughts there.
Okay, so I think I heard 2 things. Number 1, you talk about efficiency and effectiveness, and I'll talk to that. And then I think you also talked about disability and the disability network. So I'll talk about that afterwards because I'd really like to talk about how do we help other employers think about bringing on people who have a disability and feel comfortable about it. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so to be effective and efficient operations, you need to think that people, not think, believe that people are your greatest assets. For those companies that believe that, you can create better efficiencies and run smoother. And the reason for that is if you feel that people are your greatest assets, you make them feel that they belong and that they want to do a good job, then you're going to be able to attract more people because you have this great reputation. Like my husband and I had a great reputation of people who were in the industry, come work at iTrends. That's the best place you could ever work. So you want to create that sense of belonging for people. And when you do that, you'll attract people, but you'll also retain people because people basically want to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of pride of being a company. I often think as entrepreneurs, they say, oh, I wish I had 10 more of me. I could run that. Well, if you treated people like this was their business too, they would be mini yous. So my suggestion is like that RevUp approach really helps people create a place where people want to come to work and who want to stay and be loyal. And when you're loyal and you're passionate, as you mentioned, Kevin, you can be more productive. So imagine your productivity, your engagement improves, and that affects the bottom line, your profit. So if you're in it for the money, treating people as your greatest asset will help the bottom line. And many companies who are in the Fortune, 500, those top tier companies really treat their people as great assets, and it increases profitability twice as well as sales. 2 times to 3 times as much, and that's according to Fortune magazine. The other thing, I think, when people are starting out, that if you're a one-man person running all aspects of your company, you're not an expert in everything. You'll call the lawyer when you need to. You'll call your bookkeeper to do your books. You'll call your accountant to do your year end. You really need to seek the advice of a senior HR person who can give you insight. People who've just had a few years experience haven't gone through all the cycles of HR or the experiences of all aspects of HR. I've known people who've been in HR for 10 years and they've never done a termination, which sounds surprising, but the chances of you having these kinds of things. So when you have a person who's got 10 or more years experience, they understand enough about HR, what to do, but they also understand the repercussions of what happens if you do this or that. Like a chess game. When you're a master at chess, you know the moves that are going to happen as a result of it. Whereas when you're a novice, you just keep moving and you keep getting, killed and you hope you last. So my recommendations is treat people with a respectful approach. And when you do that, like that RevUp approach, you create trust, you create confidence, and then you create an engaged, loyal company. And when you need to, you really should seek the advice of an expert in the HR field to help you kind of make sure you're running effectively and smoothly and as minimum risks as possible. That's one of the things that an expert HR can help you do, is minimize your risk when it comes to people leaving you or not being compliant, for example.
Yeah, and protecting your profits, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny thing is they won't hire somebody to give them advice, but the minute somebody sues them for being wrongfully terminated, they're going to have to fork out that money. They're just going to fork it out. So sometimes being a bit more proactive will save you money in the long run, and also keep your work culture more positive than negative. When crap happens, the negativity really intensifies. Or if you have a toxic work employee, they pollute the whole organization. And when you finally terminate them, you'll find that things actually, why didn't I do this sooner? Because you'll find the culture changes, the trust starts to kind of come back a little bit. That kind of thing happens.
And yeah, absolutely. And Hilda, I don't have to tell you that when we talk about diverse hiring of people with disabilities, they often stay longer because they want to prove they can do the work, right? So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the message you would give employers about the positive benefits of hiring those with disabilities or other diverse groups.
So I know you talked about Discovery Ability Network. I actually have personal experience with a similar program that is for those on the autistic spectrum, and that's called specialist intern. I think it's like special and intern, and basically it's a program that identifies that there are people on the spectrum that could actually make meaningful employment. And it was discovered by somebody in, I think it was Sweden, one of the Scandinavian countries. He had a son who was autistic, and he didn't know what would happen to him after a certain age and could he get meaningful work. So he created this program, and it's spread now internationally, and Canada has had it for maybe 5 or 6 years now or more. And what they do is they have convinced major companies like all of the major banks or most of the major banks and even IBM to hire these people for a period of time for to be kind of transitioned into training, and if they do well they hire them. At what they found in the banks is that these people are actually really good employees. They know the work that they do. They're really qualified in doing it. And those on the spectrum, their social skills are not quite uh, as it doesn't quite come as easily as for those who are not autistic. So what happens is what they found was, you talked about people want to stay longer because they want to prove something. I say those people with disabilities, once they get into a company, they do want to stay because it's not just proving something, there's a sense of pride of what they're doing, and there's the routine. They've got a system now that works, that balances their abilities with their workload. It becomes easier for them to do it. Whereas if they had to start another place, they would have to start all over again, being comfortable, letting people get comfortable with them. And so I think people tend to stay longer or not even move because they found something that's meaningful, that they're really good at, and they're getting to develop friendships with people. So I think these are some of the benefits, and I think statistics, using the ones from the Discovery Ability Network, said that some companies actually looked at the sick time and compared those with the disabilities to those that didn't have disabilities, and those with the disabilities had zero time off work. And you kind of scratch your head, and why? It's because they are trying to prove, and they are capable of doing it. What I think some companies need to do is they need to help themselves understand the biases, because I think that's the biggest barrier. There's conscious bias, but there's also unconscious bias, and teaching people about those really will help create more of an inclusive work culture. When you look at people and you respect their differences and you look at them as equals, which I talked about before, looking at them as equals and helping them feel that sense of belonging, looking at what they're good at. And that's that uniqueness piece. What are they really good at, and how do I tap into that? And when people are really good at something, they'll do a really, really good job at that. So helping people to overcome biases. And I think when we talk about diversity, equality, equity, depending on who's talking, and inclusion, we really talk about trying to make a place, more DEI. Now, the diversity is it's almost statistical. I need so many people that are of different colors and races and genders and some disability. But that's not the essence of a truly functional program. That's just hiring people. It makes sense to do that because we all have different perspectives and ideas, and that creates a much more innovative, creative of operations when you bring in diversity. But the key to it is equity, treating people as equals, treating them to have a voice at the table, not just to be a number, but to have a voice at the table, to be heard. And the key, and it's not expensive, is inclusivity. Make everybody feel included in the company, that their voice is equally as important as yours, that everybody is heard and understood, and that we look at the uniqueness of people and really tap into their potential, because when you do that, people really feel more valued and want to do more and be a part of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, as you said before, gives them a sense of community as well as a sense of belonging too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was curious if you wanted to dive in more to the RevUp approach, because I know it's a signature program of yours and it really helps management people really training themselves to get better people skills and to help them succeed in business. So I'm going to give you the floor to really dive into the REVUP program as well.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah, I'm very proud of what RevUp means and what it can do. And as I said earlier, when my husband and I created iTrans, we really wanted people to feel a sense of being able to grow professionally and feel really good about that, but also to love what they did. And so when I started People Bright, I thought, so how do I articulate that? And I don't want to say, here's the 5 easy steps on how to be a better manager. So the word rev up came to me. Like, rev up is energy. My company's name is People Bright because I want you to brighten up your company. And so rev up makes sense. And rev up stands for treat people with respect the way they want to be treated. Look at them as equals. Value who they are. Look at their uniqueness and tap into that potential. It's 5 words, 5 values. And what I believe is managers are the key. The business owner and the managers and the leaders are the key to building a strong workplace where people want to feel that they belong and they want to stay. That helps the bottom line. But it's just good common sense. So what I've created is a program to help managers with their people management skills. Most of us get promoted to management because we know our technical stuff and we manage the project and effectively. But many of us don't know how to manage people, and it's not inherent. I'm a people person. I was since I was a little girl. So it comes to me naturally, but not to everybody. And so imagine an engineering firm that could have that happen. And that's what we did. So my program is focusing on managers and then on team building to look at how do you create a stronger work culture? How do you motivate and uplift your team? So I've created a program where there is training on Rev Up. There's training on how do you identify the uniqueness of yourself and others. And I do that through an assessment tool called Fascination Advantage. So if you know Myers-Briggs and you know DISC and Strength Finders and other types of assessments, they look at how you think and how you think and analyze the world, whether you're a people person or an analytical detail person. In Fascination, it's how the world sees you. And when the world sees you at your best, when you fascinate them, then you create confidence in yourself and trusting relationships, and that helps. So what I do for when I'm training managers, I get them to do the fascination assessment because that clearly identifies their uniqueness. And the beauty of the fascination program is it looks at how the world sees you, and it writes the report in a very positive way. What they say in Fascination is different is better than better. So this is that uniqueness piece. Your uniqueness is better than kind of trying to be like everybody else. It's what sets you apart. And when we tap into that person's uniqueness, we can create a potential that really helps the company. So I teach them about communication, I teach them about themselves, and I teach them how to relate to others. It's based on languages. We speak 7 different languages in terms of the way are we a passionate person, an innovative person, a detailed person, a decisive person. So there are 7 different languages, and we identify your top 2. And when you talk with your top 2, you talk with confidence, and that helps build. And then I finalize it because it's about communication. I finalize it through communicating every day to build trust and uplift people, and then to deal with difficult conversations because people avoid costly conversations. And it costs sometimes $7,500 for a conversation you don't have with people when you kind of shy away from that. So that's the program, and it really is to help people build strong people management skills, and that's going to help you as a company build more inclusivity, build a stronger work culture, and have individuals feel valued for what they do and want to stay and want to stay.
Yeah, and building people management skills can also help you in every aspect of your life, just not in business, right?
Exactly. I think we all shy away from the more difficult conversations in personal life, whether it's with a significant partner, loved one, or a family member. Or there's a lot of shying away. So definitely it doesn't hurt to do it in everyday life. It's practice. People continue to avoid it will just continue to feel uncomfortable. But the more people try to be brave and have a conversation, it's great. And I have a kind of a formula for how people can have more neutral conversations and keep it from escalating and getting worse.
Well, let's talk about the formula. Formula. What do you think the key is to accomplishing that?
Okay, so when I think when I was in my younger days, people you come up with this idea, oh, I know they're just lazy, and I'm going to deal with this laziness, and I remember in one situation, the union, like the VP of HR, basically had a letter crafted for this person for me to terminate her. So we'd already made the assumption of why this person should be terminated, and that I learned a valuable lesson. That wasn't like if you'd listened to her story in the first place, you wouldn't have terminated her. Okay, so the thing is, when you are having a difficult conversation, don't try to second guess what the reason is. Rather, go in with facts and say, I've noticed that you've been late 3 times in the last few weeks. And if you've built a trusting relationship with them, you can say, this isn't like you. Is there something that's happening? Because you should be coming to work on time, but I notice this hasn't. So what can we do? What can we do to help you? So that opens the door. It's a neutral atmosphere. And then what I tell people to do is once you've stated the facts, then listen. And I don't mean listen to figure out an answer within 10 seconds. I mean, listen. And you're good at that, Kevin. You'll let people talk and then you'll share. So listen. And when you think you've heard enough and you're going to start to talk, just be quiet and listen some more. And listen and keep listening until you feel you've heard the whole story. And then the next things that should come out of your mouth is, again, something neutral. So I hear what you said. This is what, you've been late these past few weeks because your father-in-law is having difficulty. You're the only person that can do this. So what can we do together? Let's figure out, because we can't, we need to come up with a solution where you still can get the work done. You're not too stressed and you can still meet your family needs. Right? So it is trying to come up with a solution that is agreeable to both parties. And then the fourth thing I say is, if you don't know the answers, you say, oh yeah, that sounds great. But maybe you don't know that there's other things that you should be checking on from a legislative point of view or the company policy. That sounds really good. Let me just check to make sure this sounds like a viable solution, or let me check to make sure there aren't other solutions that I can come up with. Let's reconvene in a couple of days. So again, first of all, come up with a neutral conversation, listen, then come up with solutions that are working together. If you don't know the answer, don't be afraid to say it, and then make sure you follow up to resolve the situation. So those are my 5 tips.
Well, they're practical and important for sure. So I want to thank you for sharing those. And I'm also curious because you talked earlier about creating an environment I trans where people feel valued, and it was voted one of the top 10 places to work in the sector. So I'm curious to ask you to expand on how you think you build environments where people want to stay, and how proud you are about building businesses where the environment is where people want to stay as well.
Okay, so I think I talked about mission, vision, and values, and you should be very clear what you want to create. And so we were very clear that we wanted to create a place where people really enjoyed feeling they were doing meaningful work. And I call it challenging because I think we all want a little challenge. Not challenging that it's anxiety producing, but challenging that I'm doing something meaningful and I feel good about it. And the other place is the fact that you want to come to work because those people are really nice and I like working with them. And so a lot of people will say, yeah, you can't change that. And I challenge that because I think it can happen. And when COVID came, I did some webinars on what people should be doing to get through COVID. And one of those comments I made was, you have the opportunity to now change your work culture. And this is a great opportunity to connect with people. So I think the key is developing trust. And you develop trust by getting to know people. And it doesn't mean you have to be like buddies. What did you have on the weekend, or where did you go to the movies? It's just over time as a manager, you have that opportunity to talk to people. It's not having a high level conversation. It can be just a short conversation that finally, he's a bit about their family, a bit about their situation, a bit about how they're coping with COVID. All those little things add up to creating a relationship, and it can be professional. So number one is always seek to get to know that person as a person, not as a person that's delivering product or services for you. The second thing is really like that REVUP approach is really getting to know people. When you develop a trusting relationship, people will want to believe you, and that minimizes the risk of difficult conversations. We had one person, we were actually during the recession of 2008, 2009, we actually had a situation where we might have to close an office. My husband and I drove out to the office, we told the staff, and then we met with them one-on-one. And this particular individual had 10-month-old twins. And I shared with him, the situation. And then at the end of the conversation, I said, so when would you like me to let you know if we're going to be needing to close the office or not? And he said, Hilda, you know me well enough, and I trust you that you know when you should tell me. And to me, like I still get little tingles when I share that story. To me, that was creating a trusting relationship. This is a person who's not in the office day to day. He's in St. Catharines, but I have built a relationship with that individual. So it is that it's creating a culture of camaraderie, of inclusivity, and we use vocabulary. I wanted people to treat people as equals. So they weren't allowed to use the word junior engineer, but it's common terminology, but they were not allowed to use the word junior engineer in front of me, at least. We would call them our engineers in training, or our newer staff, or something like that, but they weren't allowed to use the word junior. We allowed people to use senior because it's a title, but junior really was not supposed to be a title. And we told them that you don't call our offices as head office and branch offices. I wanted that equality. So people had to call the offices by the name. It was the Calgary office or the Vancouver office. And we were the Richmond Hill office. But I said, if you do need to distinguish us, you could call us the corporate office because that's where corporate-y things happen. But don't call us the head office. It's including sports. We had a lot of sports teams for our staff, and we had an event for United Way. And every year we created an opportunity during the second week of our campaign to have events, and it really brought our staff together. They would say, I had this one staff member who was moving to Calgary, and I said, so Megan, when do you want to relocate to Calgary? Because that was her original home. And she said, well, maybe November. And this was like August. And so I said, that wouldn't be because you want one more United Way campaign? And she said, yeah. She said, when I move to Calgary, there won't be a campaign to run right away because we'll just have a few people. So I just wanted to have one more, chance at that. So I think along the way, we created opportunities to recognize staff, to make them feel close together. We even had staff who would ask us when our anniversary party was, because they were planning a ski trip and they didn't want to miss the anniversary party. And that to me was like, really? Because I remember there were times when we had to be at company events, and my husband would say, I don't know if I want to go to that. And here we are having staff who are making sure they're free on that weekend. So it's working at it. It's really working at creating a place that people enjoy being a part of, and it's creating trust. And then the last thing I'll mention is the manager is the key to creating a culture that people want to stay. And one of those things is, as a manager, you have the power to motivate and uplift your staff. When you value them, when you make them feel good, they increase their confidence and they increase their skills. When you put them down, their confidence gets shattered, and their ability to continue to take on more meaningful, challenging work also gets shattered because of the confidence. So as a manager, you're trying to uplift skills and uplift confidence, and you can see the progress if you nurture, guide, motivate, and uplift them. And you can see the deterioration if you belittle them and shatter their confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank you for sharing those stories. And, Hilda, my final question for you is, you've been at this for more than 20 years now in the form of human resources management and your own entrepreneurial spirit. So I'm wondering, for yourself, I'm wondering the impact that you think you've made professionally, and how you would want your personal legacy to be defined.
Wow, that's a deep question. uh, I think the journey my husband and I had building iTrans, the fact that all of us, well, okay, many of us who worked at iTrans wear that experience with pride. Uh, I remember when I walked into an event and I was between jobs thinking, what do I want to do? And they said, silly girl, there'll never be another iTrans. And I'm going, what do they know that I don't know? And what I realized is we created a special place to work where it wasn't just my husband and I doing it, but we hired people who also embraced the idea and became ambassadors. And to me, that's a legacy, is to teach other people, that pay it forward that you and I talked about earlier, Kevin, is I want to make people's lives richer and more enjoyable. And if I can do that, that's a powerful legacy. So my legacy to date has been what I did building iTrans with my husband. And going forward is taking that to the next stage of creating it for other companies, as many as I can. I want to spread the word of REVUP, because it's a simple concept, but if you adopt it, imagine what you could do for yourself, for those that you touch, whether it's the business side or, as you say, any conversation can be impacted with a REVUP frame of mind. So I'm on a mission to spread REVUP globally, and I've got a book coming out in December. I've got speaking engagements that I want to really, really help other people adopt REVUP or something similar, where they're nice to other people and they can make a difference in our lives. Because your working life is so many hours in a day, so don't spend it in misery, as I say. Enjoy what you do, and if more managers could be nice, we'd all have a great time at work. And if people at work can be nice to each other, imagine what an inclusive, great place we could have for those 8 hours or more or less per day that you spend.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hilda, finally, I'm curious to ask you, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can accomplish that goal?
So my company's name is People Bright Consulting, BRIGHT. So you can go into my website, People Bright Consulting, or link in with me. I'm LinkedIn, all the intro / Hilda Gan. That's it, Hilda Gan. There's no numbers, nothing. And I would appreciate people who want to come forward and let me know that you heard me on Kevin's show. That way I can make that connection. Thank you.
Fabulous. Well, Hilda, I want to thank you for spending some time with me this afternoon. I know how busy and impressive and intense your schedule is, so I really want to thank you for your time, energy, and efforts on my behalf and sharing a mutual passion about spreading the need for increased awareness on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to thank you for being here today. It's most appreciated.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin, for helping us to shed the light on diversity and disabilities and equity, and helping me to promote the value of people being your greatest assets, and how they can, some tips and strategies on how they can do that. So thank you for having me today. I love the kind of research that you do, and the copious amounts of topics that you cover to have this let's have a conversation. So thank you for inviting me and having me share some of my thoughts with your audience. Thank you.